Hello, I am Eli. I am the head of product at Tuple, and today I am talking to Pete Schaffner, the design lead at Tuple, and Fernando Barbat, who is an engineer who works on our macOS client, to talk about our latest feature on macOS, which is a zoom tool. So I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but if you're pairing with someone, their screen is very big, your screen is very small, it's very hard. Text is very, very tiny. So we built a tool, make it easier. I had a great time talking to Pete and Fernando about both how the feature evolved sort of from a UX perspective and how the technology that we used to build it also changed over the course of development. I enjoyed talking to them a lot. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. Thanks a lot. All right, I am here with Pete and Fernando. Pete is the design lead here at Tuple, and Fernando is an engineer who primarily works on our macOS client app, talking about the new Zoom feature. So I figured we'd get started by talking about more of like the design UX aspect of the feature. So this feature started out as one thing. I feel like became something very different over the course of development. How did maybe you guys can tell the story of how this feature came to be and how it changed as we were building it.
Sure. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, okay. Um, in a nutshell, what it is that if there's a disparity in resolution between the people who are sharing their screens, if someone has a really big display and then your pair is looking at that screen on a small, laptop, things can look really tiny. So we wanted to add the ability to zoom in, um, and that was about it. We wanted to be able to zoom. And so we thought, let's start off simple. We originally just wanted it to be something that we could kind of use internally for a long time and then kind of sneak it out there and tell folks about it if they wrote in and were wanting this type of functionality. So it was going to be keyboard driven, gesture driven, like pinching to zoom in and out on the trackpad, command plus minus to zoom in and out, all that kind of stuff. And then it, and then, new shit came to light.
Wait,
That's,
yeah, what was the moment when new shit came to light?
I think there were a few things. Well, first of all, yeah, we did an estimation like, okay, we need to change these things, but we realized later that actually a lot of things needed to change, actually. Like there are a lot of details. Like, for example, you don't want to resize like the loading spinner, you don't want to resize the drawings, you don't want to resize the highlighting. Um, and And also, there are a lot of interactions that you can have, like pressing space, like pressing command. Like as we developed it and we tested it with Pete, like mainly he realized like, oh, it would be nice to actually polish this little thing. And yeah, actually the scope changed quite a lot. Yeah. What
Yeah.
what do you think?
And yeah, so like it started off, I think I made one mock, and then we wrote our specs out. And the way Fernando and I work usually is I'll kind of prototype something in SwiftUI, and then he'll start hooking up hooking up all the bits and pieces. But Fernando just started making this because there wasn't UI, right, that we wanted to expose. And their initial idea was to be, when you're in the different annotation modes, we call them. So when you highlight or draw or put text in, we wanted this to be an ephemeral mode you could go to within those modes. So like you'd hold down the modifier key and then you'd be able to zoom, or pan around and things like that. Um, and as I think it came from just Fernando and I uh, prototyping it. We kind of needed a way to test it more easily. So Fernando
Yeah.
made a separate mode in our toolbar. So there's, the annotation modes, and then there was zoom mode.
Yeah,
And
that
so we
was
started
because
using that.
it was the easiest way to have it working was just to add a new annotation mode, which technically is not an annotation mode, but it was the hackiest and fastest way to do it, just so we could try it out. And yeah, people actually like to have the button there. And yeah, that it kept growing a little bit.
I feel like that was the moment when like things turned from, oh, this is a small experiment just for us to figure out if we like this, to, oh, maybe this is a thing we should polish up and ship to everybody. Because I also feel like that was also a moment when, because it was more visible, everyone from the team could get their hands on it. And I think that once we could switch into that mode more formally, we started thinking more about other additional hotkeys we could use. We started thinking about could it be on and transient at the same time? Like I think it stirred up a lot of ideas with everyone on the team, and I feel like from that point onwards, it felt more like a much more inclusive and highly polished process as opposed to like a very experimental kind of hidden thing we were doing before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Once we released it to a team, like for example, Johnny said, "Hey, I'd like DoubleClick to actually go all in." Like, and yeah, a lot of like little interactions there. Yeah, I think it ended up being quite nice.
Yeah, it's real chef's kiss now. And it's funny how yeah, we just kind of it just a lot of times we scope, our projects pretty tightly and we hold to that as well as we can. This is one of those instances where we didn't. We realized how good it could be, as we were making it, and we just doubled down on making it as polished as we could, and all that feedback pouring in from the rest of the team. Just we're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. All right, let's do that. And it was also ironic because at the beginning and when we started, we wanted it to just be a ephemeral mode that you could go into, do your zoom in, and then you're back to whatever annotation mode you're in. Then we added the explicit mode. We were using it in that. We got it really just fine tuned and working perfect. And and then I came back and started complaining. I was like, but I just want this to be an ephemeral mode. So then we added that back in, but we kept the dedicated mode. So it just, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it really did kind of snowball, but I couldn't be happier with it.
Yeah, I think it was actually nice to have both things because the ephemeral mode is nice for expert users, but it's not as discoverable. So yeah, having the explicit mode made it really easy for people who actually don't know how to use the app to actually find those things. And yeah, in the end, I think we got the best of each world.
Right on. Yeah, cool. You go in a big circle, right? You go away,
Yeah.
all the way back to where you started.
Yeah.
So just like the UX and design of this feature, I think changed a lot over the course of its development. I also got the sense that the technological aspect of it also changed a great deal. So, Fernando, maybe you can walk us through that a little bit because I know there was a lot that
Yeah.
happened there.
So we started implementing the prototype using SwiftUI only. Within like I don't know, within a day we had something working. Of course, like in how of little rough edges, but it was kind of working. And yeah, sometime later, discussing with Mikey, the architect, and we were discussing about the trade-offs, and we eventually decided to actually implement it using a scroll view, mainly for performance reasons. And yeah, things changed there a little bit, but yeah, actually changing one thing with the other was not that big of a deal. Yeah, the end scroll view, it was like, for example, we wanted to have rubber band effect. Actually, we went back and forth with that a little bit, but in the end, we wanted to have it. And the NS scroll view doesn't actually, it has a rubber band effect, but only if you swipe with the trackpad. And we also want to have the same effect by dragging, like using the pan mode. And it doesn't support that, so we did do some crazy stuff on top of it. But it ended up working nicely, so yeah, we were happy with it. So yeah, we also did some explorations, but we ended up landing on an implementation that we were happy with.
And something that happened that actually happens a lot in our app, which is we do use AppKit, and then we kind of use hosting views, SwiftUI hosting views there. So we blend the two technologies together, and like we have like a little Zoom toolbar that shows up when you're in the Zoom mode, and like that. Fernando and I, we made that in SwiftUI, and there's things like that, which I think is it's cool. I like that approach because there's strengths in both technology stacks. The AppKit is old and has, a lot of history, and they've really polished a lot of components in the UI and UX of how things work. So we can lean into that when it makes sense. The scroll view, I think, was kind of one of those instances. But then there's other things where it just makes a lot of sense to use SwiftUI, and we're not afraid to do that either. So
Yeah, I'd say we are leaning more towards SwiftUI now, But yeah, sometimes it really depends on the specific thing that we're changing, and we make the decision like just in that specific context. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that we're not dogmatic about it. But yeah, I mean, since you and I have started working together, SwiftUI has become something we use more and more, and um, it's great for our workflow really because it's easy for me to just draw a really rough picture and then get in there and start implementing it, at least the interactions and how it looks, and kind of sweating all those details. And then you and I come together, you pretty much make it work, and clean up my code. But we have this tight design development loop, and it goes fast, and we get like really polished uh, details in there. Yeah, I don't know if that's interesting to anybody,
Yeah,
but I like it.
that's a nice thing about SwiftUI, that it encourages that workflow that you have the preview, and it can be seen as like a unit test of the view in a way. And yeah, I really like that. That it allows you to iterate fast, and yeah, I like it.
No, I think that is interesting. Again, I'm an outsider to all of this, as a product person and also as somebody who's never like done macOS development seriously. But like listening to y'all talk about it, again, it seems like a tough position to be in for Apple, where they do have this, legacy thing that's been around for a long time, but is like polished to the nines and used in a lot of places. I'm sure there's a lot of documentation, a lot of examples. So if you guys like the new kid on the block, right? But it seems like one thing that I can really appreciate, because again, a lot of my experience is more in like web development, but having the actual like developer experience of being able to iterate quickly and pass designs back and forth, like that feels like an underappreciated aspect of a technology. Like sure, there's like with the actual design of the APIs and performance and all this stuff that I think is more applicable to one person building something themselves. But being able to enable better collaboration between folks and create faster feedback loops, I think that's an important dimension of a technology as well. And it seems like that was like a first class focus when they designed it. So again, even just seeing you guys work together, I can see that the choices that they made in designing SwiftUI enable your workflow to go a lot more smoothly.
And that's true. You can still like be very disciplined and use AppKit and kind of a similar workflow. But yeah, it's true that SwiftUI it's like makes it like the default approach in a way to work that way, and make it easy. So
It's been cool how it's kind of changed our workflow, but the architecture of our code, because what we did for the longest time is when there was something new, a new feature, we would just spin up a little, toy Xcode project. And we do a lot of the heavy lifting from a UI perspective there. We'd stub out, our API, or we would, stub out existing code that we knew was in the main project there. And then we just like drag and drop or copy and paste once we were ready to start, making it for real. But now with this, like it's all like we have access to our whole code base. It's right there. It's still kind of in a little isolated playground, but yeah, we have access to the whole app, and it's faster, I think, to hook it up and make it real so that you can really get a feel for it, because prototyping is one thing, making the UI, kind of contrived, change state and do what you want is one thing, but I mean, it's got to work at the end of the day. And so the faster you can actually start using it and making it work and letting our team use it, um, that's really powerful. And I like that a lot with how those technologies have enabled us to do that.
yeah, when we started using more the SwiftUI more deeply, we introduced SwiftUI, and also we also introduced like some other architectural patterns that made it a little bit easier to test components in isolations. Like started using packages, and we started actually um, basically using protocols to actually make it easier to mock dependencies. I know if we are going too technical now, but yeah, like all the things together, I think have been useful to add and to allow us to go faster and smoother.
I feel like this is a good point to wrap a bow on it, where it feels like, generally speaking, we've been making a deliberate effort on the technological front to allow for more collaborative style, faster durations. And this was a project where we did that on a process level, like at a company level. We were trying to put it out there and iterate quickly, and I think we did that. And I think we made the right technology choice for the job, even though SwiftUI seems like it was part of it. And even though we landed on using the scroll view, it seems like we had set things up in such a way that that transition also was not terribly painful for us to make, in the vein of getting the performance and functionality we wanted. So, I don't know. Seems like we put our money where our mouth was with respect to moving quickly and iterating on stuff, and we ended up with something that I hope you guys feel happy with it. I'm happy with it. I hope everyone out there likes it too, and that it makes your experience with Tuple that much better. So thanks, Pete. Thanks, Fernando. Appreciate you guys hopping on for this. And again, if you have feedback out there on the Zoom stuff, let me know. All right, thanks. Bye.